And there's a good article in this month's in the March newsletter about R&D specifically.
Oh, excellent.
It has all the steps. It tells you to go to fidelity.com if you have any questions.
Oh, yeah.
I basically took it from there. And then, so all the information is right there.
Yeah, and you don't want to get too deep with anybody about this. If they have questions, they can get with Tom, or they can get with, is there somebody in the office that knows about this?
Yeah.
Or your own taxes.
Yeah, we on there, we say, you should contact your CPA or your financial investment, your financial manager, or whatever we said.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to be in the advice thing here.
And you certainly don't want to be in any kind of tax advice or financial advice. I mean, a couple things you should know is that any contributions to the capital campaign are charitable deductions, just to the extent that you're permitted to do charitable deductions, just as any others would be. Sometimes capital campaigns can be valuable because you can bunch the money up. So you could, if you have it, you can put all the money in 1 year, and that can make all your other deductions more valuable, possibly. But again, you're not giving people too much financial advice about this. The benefits of the RMD, if you have to take these required minimum distributions, it bumps up your income, it's taxable income, and it often bumps people up into higher tax brackets, and that can make your Social Security more taxable and have other bad impacts. If you give it to the church or to a charitable organization, you don't have any of that. It's non-taxable, so it doesn't count towards
Right, so
your
it's
income.
almost like if you take $10,000 out, you're going to get taxed, say 30%. You only have $7,000 to give back to them. If you do it directly, you get the 10.
Yeah, well, that's for appreciated securities, yeah.
Right.
For the RMD, you can't deduct, there's no deduction. There's no charitable deduction for the RMD, but it keeps you from bumping up into a higher bracket.
Yeah.
I have another question. There
Sure.
are 4 of each of these sheets. Are we supposed to leave 3 with them?
Well, so we gave you those before we decided that we were going to mail things out.
Okay.
So you'll have them as extras, but
Email, but they will
Yeah.
have seen these 3.
they will have,
We'll
right,
have the emails.
correct.
If
Yeah.
they look at them.
Yeah.
But there's a chance that maybe they did.
Right.
Right.
And they'll lose them, and you know how it is.
But it seems like they should think about this before.
Exactly, you definitely want them to think about this.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you had an RMD and it was $10,000.
Can we have one person talk, please?
If you had an RMD and it was $10,000 and you took that, that's $10,000 income for you.
Correct.
Then you'd have to pay 30% on it.
Yeah.
So that, then you're left with 7. But by not doing that and doing it direct, they get the full 10. So,
Correct.
So that's not it.
And it's actually a bigger benefit than that, because again, it bumps people up into a tax bracket that makes other income tax more taxable sometimes.
That's part of stock too. If you sell stock directly to All Souls,
Right.
then you don't pay any,
Gain.
any fee and no taxes because the money comes directly to All Souls.
But you can deduct the full amount, even if so
Well,
for
you-
appreciated
you-
securities. Right.
Okay.
Right, so those are a couple things to know a little bit about, but again, don't worry about knowing too much. And I should say this, but any questions that come up that you don't know the answers to, don't make things up, even though that might be tempting. If you're willing to do so, tell people that you'll find the answers and get back to them. So, and questions about their finances or their tax situation, they should find out for themselves. But if they have questions about the project, or questions about the church, or questions about, how do I get involved in singing with the choir, or how do I get involved in social justice work? You've talked about your social justice work, and it sounds wonderful. What do I do? If you can find something about that out for people, that would be useful. So you do the asks, and you ask them to make their pledges, and hopefully they're willing to do that. You don't need to, they can keep their pledges confidential. They can fold the paper up. We have envelopes, right? So they can put the pledges.
That's why those envelopes are in there.
That's why these envelopes are in there. So what I like to do is, I take the pledge form out and we talk about the pledging. Even so, I didn't say this before, but with the giving guide, where the giving guide is based on people's income, your job is not to ask people what their income is and help them find their spot on the chart. They can do that themselves. If they have questions about it, you can help them. But you don't need to see what they pledge. You can, I always hand them a form with the envelope and say, here you can fill it out. You can put it in the envelope and seal it. In my experience, almost everybody just hands it back because they're not as concerned about the privacy of this as we are. But you want to look you want to be concerned about it and indicate that we take the privacy pretty seriously, and that, you know, that we manage the pledge data on a need-to-know, pretty close hold basis. So then at the end, you thank them again, thank them for meeting with you, thank them for making a pledge, whatever it is, a financial commitment, whatever it is.
And also, within 24 hours, you have a thank you note in your
Yes.
folder too, that can be put together. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah,
Beautiful.
we'll get to that. There's a few things that I'm going to want you to do afterwards, and this is a good time to mention this, but personal thank you note, a little handwritten note, and these cards are really nice. Just a couple of sentences. Thank you for meeting with me. I loved hearing your stories. I loved hearing about your kids' coming of age, or how much your kids loved OWL, or how much you love singing in the choir. Just a couple of things that you might remember, and send these off within 24 hours. That's so powerful as far as cementing the connections. It really has a huge impact. Nobody gets nice personal notes anymore. You know, everything we get in the mail is either junk or bills, or otherwise irrelevant to our lives. People will really like this, so do that. I think we've already talked about this. I think we've talked about this too. I kind of jumped ahead here as talking, answering questions and whatnot. And like I said, I'll send you this so you'll have all of these. Oh, so one thing for the capital campaign. So let's look at the pyramid. So this pyramid is based on what I learned during the feasibility study and what I know from other campaigns about what it would take to raise $1.4 million, which is in the range of what's possible here. There's a lot of rules of thumb about capital campaigns, and one of them is that congregations can raise somewhere between 3 and 4 times their annual giving. So your annual giving is just under 400,000, is that right, Tom? 385, something like that. So 3 times that would be around 1.2 million, and 4 times that would be around 1.6. So 1.4 is kind of right in the middle, and the feasibility study kind of bore out that you should be able to raise this much, maybe more if people get really excited. And I think I told you earlier some of the reasons why we're optimistic, and I'll tell you some more about that in a minute or two. But this chart kind of lays out conceptually what it would take to raise this much money. And so you can go over this with people and look at the chart and talk about it. And we're gonna give you a target range to ask for each person, or to suggest. And you can figure out how to do that. I think it's pretty straightforward. You can tell people, you know, this is what we're working towards, this chart here, and the stewardship team has come up with target ranges to invite people to think about, and we're hoping you might consider a gift in the range of $5,000 to $7,500, and we'll give you that. And it's based on a combination of their annual giving history and what we know about them, if we know anything else, and what we think they might be capable of and willing to give. And if you ask for, in my experience, if you ask for a target range, you're much more likely to get more generous giving than if you don't. If you just leave it more open-ended, people won't really know what you're talking about, and too many of them will be near the bottom. Yes?
Are you going to give us our target range?
Well, that's a very good question.
I think we are. There'll be emails from Claire and us and me within like 3 or 4 days or 5 days with a list of your people you're going to visit, and with their annual pledge this year, and then with a range of the ask for the capital things like 3 to 4 times of the
Yeah, but I mean,
Oh, but
would
she
you
means for-
include me, if you send me a
Right.
list, would you include my information too?
Yeah, so tonight you're going to practice, and some of you I hope will make your pledges, but we didn't really come up with target ranges for you. So if you all can think
We
in
weren't
the,
prepared for this tonight.
No, I didn't mean it tonight, but
Yeah.
I mean, before we go,
yeah,
out visiting.
yeah.
Well, you'll, for you or for your visiting?
For herself, yeah, that's
Personal.
what she's talking about,
I just want to see how you rank me.
yeah.
you know, and it gives me a base for
It's
reference.
gonna be
We
like
think
three,
you're fabulous.
three,
Well, that's how you're ranked.
it's gonna be three to four times, 3 to 4 times what your annual pledge is.
Rounded up, probably. So that's, the idea is to ask for a bigger number than you might think, and people will generally be kind of honored and flattered, even if they can't reach that number, has been my experience. So I think, yeah, generally we'll look in the 3.5 range, and then round up. Because on average, in order to make this 1.4 million, we have to raise about 3.5 times annual giving. And you know how averages work. Some people will not be able to give anywhere near that, and others will be able to give more than that. So that's, I think, the way we'll do most of the targets, is somewhere between 3.5 and 4 times annual rounded up. So when you're thinking about your own pledges, you can think in those ranges too. Although, of course, success, I'm not sure I mentioned this before, but success tends to be driven by a combination of some very large gifts, generally way out of proportion to people's annual giving, and then as close to 100% participation as possible. Usually, we think of a break point, and you can see another color-coded thing here. But gifts of $10,000 and up are in the major gift category, so to 5 figures and up. Usually 2/3 to 70% of the money will come from gifts in that range, and the rest will come from other gifts. So I'll mention this now. We talk a lot about large gifts, because large gifts are a major driver here, but I can't emphasize enough that as close to getting everybody to play is really helpful. So if you're talking to some family that really has no ability to do anything significant, or anything, you know, they're not looking at 5-figure giving, keep in mind that something like $1 a day for the 3 years is around $1,200 for the 3+ years, or even for just 3 calendar years itself is over $1,000. Most of our families can do at least that if they want to. And you don't want people just thinking that, oh, they really are only looking for these top gifts, they don't really need my $1,000. If 20 families can give $1,000, that's something we couldn't be able to do otherwise. You know, that might fund some part of the kitchen that we would not be able to do. So you don't want people thinking we don't want those, or that those are not welcome.
And for the sense of community, that everybody has participated.
Exactly. Exactly. That's the real thing, is that we want everybody to feel like they're a part of this. And again, if we really do get close to 100%, everyone will feel really good about this.
Yeah.
So you don't want people feeling that, oh, gee, if I can't give 50,000, I really shouldn't give anything. Yeah.
So I wasn't part of the last campaign, but I have to say I walked by that tree of names with envy. Like, I want my name on it.
Yeah.
And so, like, are we doing that again? Is that like part of one of the carrots we're offering? Are we going to do, like, if people like give, is there going to be something that marks their name?
I would imagine.
Yeah,
We have to.
Yeah,
We
but
should definitely.
Yeah.
We should definitely do that. That's it. People like recognition too, and
I agree.
yeah, people like that.
large, we should get a really large, as possible for meeting rooms and stuff.
Ah, okay.
Really big gifts.
But we are talking about doing what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, something.
Yeah, we
We're
should
just not
definitely.
sure exactly
Yeah,
what
yeah.
the.
You get a bigger leaf if you're
Yeah, yeah. And people like, you know, it's funny the things that motivate people, but people like, the reason we do ranges is that people like, it helps people stretch a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, and your job, I haven't said this before, but you're not doing a hard sell here. You're not twisting anybody's arm. You're basically inviting people to be as generous as they can be. And you don't want people to pledge more money than they can afford. I mean, that's not what we're doing. You're not selling things they don't want. But what I find is that people look at a chart like this and they think, well, you know, we were thinking of, you know, maybe 5,000, but maybe we can get up into the next level. You know, maybe we can do 7,500. That would, I think, make a difference to the campaign. Let's see if we can do that. Giving people kind of levels like this helps them think in those terms. So that's how I see this. You're inviting people to think as generously as they can. You don't want anybody feeling pressured to give more than they can give or than they should give. But I think you'll find the chart is very helpful. People like this. And without this, they have no context at all what you're talking about. Because you might think, well, it's fairly simple math. There's, what, about 200 families here? 170 families or 180. So, you know, if everybody gave, what is it, $5,000, that would be enough. Would that be the right amount? 10,000 would be 1.7. So, you know, if everybody gave 7,000 or something, we would reach the goal. But it's not going to work out like that. So, and most people can't do that. They're not going to do that math anyway. So they won't have any idea whether it's going to take a lot of gifts of $100 or a lot of gifts of 1,000. They won't know anything. They won't have, even though they'll have thought through it a little bit. Without some education, they won't really know what we're looking for. So this chart, and the fact that they'll get it in advance will really help.